We all do it. We say we don't, but we do. Someone leaves the room, and within seconds, someone else leans in. Did you hear what happened? And just like that, the ritual begins. Gossip, spilling the tea, talking behind someone's back. It's easy to dismiss it as petty or mean, but it's more than that. It always has been. Gossip isn't just about drama or jealousy. It's a social instinct, a way of navigating the world, a tool, a weapon, a mirror. And the truth is, most of the time, it's not even about the person we're talking about. It's about us, who we trust, what we fear, where we fit in. We gossip to bond, to vent, to belong, to feel like we're on the inside of something. But gossip can also destroy. It can isolate, manipulate, or humiliate. It spreads fast. It sticks. And once it's out, you can't take it back. Still, despite everything, we keep doing it. Why? Why do we keep whispering? Why do we need to talk about other people? That's what this video is about. Not to judge it, not to glorify it, but to understand it, because sometimes the things we whisper in secret say the loudest things about who we are. Before the internet, before group chats, before language even had structure, there were whispers, not in words, but in glances, gestures, signals, a grunt that meant danger, a raised eyebrow that meant he broke the rules in our earliest tribes. Survival wasn't just about being strong or fast. It was about being informed. Who was trustworthy? Who stole food? Who helped raise the children? Who lied? Knowing these things meant the difference between safety and danger, between belonging and exile. This is where gossip began, not as something cruel, but as something necessary. According to evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar, gossip replaced grooming in large social groups. Monkeys groom each other to build bonds, but humans, we started using words. Words were faster, more efficient. You could bond with someone just by telling them a story. Did you hear what he did? Be careful around her. I wouldn't trust that one. These weren't just idle comments. They were warnings, signals. They helped maintain trust in the group. They kept people in line. They kept people safe. We didn't just survive by hunting or gathering. We survived by talking. Even now, our brains are wired for it. We crave information about people, not just because we're curious, but because, deep down, we believe it keeps us safer. So when someone starts a sentence with, "Okay, don't tell anyone I told you this," part of our brain lights up, not just with excitement, but with strategy, because we're not just listening for fun, we're listening for useful knowledge. In other words, the whisper kept us alive. Not everything we say about someone is gossip, but where's the line? If I tell you that someone's getting married, is that gossip? What if I tell you they cheated on their partner last year? Still gossip. Now what if I tell you they never told their partner the truth? It's not always clear, but there's one basic rule. Gossip is when we talk about someone who isn't present, usually in ways they haven't consented to. It doesn't have to be cruel, but it's still gossip. Now here's something interesting. The word gossip didn't always mean what it does today. In Old English, the word was godsib, a term for someone close to you. A godparent, a sponsor at baptism, a trusted companion. In faith, back then, your gossip was the one by your side during life's milestones. Someone who witnessed your transformation. It was sacred. But over time, the word shifted from sacred companionship to idle talk, from someone who stood beside you to someone who talked about you. Strange, right? The same word that once meant a spiritual ally became the word we now use for betrayal. And maybe that shift says something. That gossip is always walking a tightrope between intimacy and invasion. It's the kind of speech that feels like closeness, even when it's cutting someone else out. Now let's go one level deeper. There's a psychological phenomenon called Munchausen syndrome, named after Baron Munchausen, a German noble known for telling wild, exaggerated stories. He once claimed he rode a cannonball through the sky. He made up entire adventures just to impress people. The syndrome. It's when someone fakes illness or suffering to gain sympathy and attention. What does that have to do with gossip? Sometimes gossip becomes performative. A performance of concern, a performance of knowing more than others, a performance of control. We exaggerate, dramatize, insert ourselves, because being the one with the story feels like being the one with the power. So gossip isn't just about what we say, it's about what we get from saying it. Sometimes it's connection, sometimes it's control, sometimes it's validation in disguise. So yes, gossip is complex. It can be kind, it can be cruel, it can even be sacred. But make no mistake, even when it comes dressed as concern, it still whispers. We like to think of gossip as either good or bad, helpful or hurtful, but the truth is, it lives in the gray area. A slippery, shifting space between two instincts, connection and control. Sometimes we gossip because we care. Don't tell anyone, but I'm worried about her. That's concern. That's protection. That's one friend warning another. Other times we gossip to connect. Not about the person, but with the person we're talking to. It becomes a ritual, an exchange. You trust me with this secret. Now I trust you. It feels warm, even sacred. But then something changes, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. The tone shifts, the smile turns sharper, the voice lowers just a little too much. And suddenly, the gossip becomes less about insight, and more about entertainment, less about care, more about control. And that's the danger, because gossip, at its worst, is betrayal in slow motion. It's smiling while you cut. It's pretending to protect while you poison. It's truth twisted into leverage. We use phrases to justify it. I'm just being honest. It's not that deep. I'd say it to their face. But we rarely do, because deep down we know when the line has been crossed, when concern turns into criticism, when observation becomes mockery, when sharing becomes spilling. And sometimes we cross that line just to feel better about ourselves, to feel smarter, cleaner, superior. We point out someone else's mess so we can forget about our own. But here's the paradox. Even cruel gossip still connects people, still builds bonds, just on a foundation of someone else's pain. So yes, gossip can bond, but it can also betray. It can hold two people close by, pushing a third one out. And when that happens, we're not just talking anymore. We're playing with knives. Why do we gossip? Not the polite answer, not the I was just venting excuse, but the real reason. Let's start with something basic. It feels good when we hear juicy information. Our brains reward us. Dopamine, the same chemical that lights up when we eat, laugh, or win. Gossip is stimulation, excitement. It makes us feel plugged in, like we're on the inside of something. But beneath the pleasure, there's something deeper, more primitive, more insecure. Sometimes gossip is about status. We pass on information to feel like we matter, to show that we know something others don't, to feel powerful, even if just for a moment. Other times, it's about belonging. We whisper to be included. We talk to avoid being talked about. It's a way of saying, I'm with you, not them. That's tribal thinking, and it's very human. There's also projection, a classic psychological defense. We notice the flaws in others that we're afraid to admit in ourselves. We say, she's so fake, because sometimes we feel fake. We mock someone's choices because we're unsure of our own. Gossip becomes a mirror. A funhouse one, maybe, but still. A reflection. There's also social comparison theory. We're constantly measuring ourselves against others. How we look, how we live, what we've achieved. And gossip gives us data, skewed data. Maybe, but it helps us place ourselves on the invisible ladder. They're failing, they're struggling, they're not as perfect as they seem. And that gives us relief. We feel a little taller, not because we've grown, but because we've cut someone else down. Sometimes gossip is revenge. Sometimes it's a warning. Sometimes it's boredom dressed up as concern. And sometimes it's just habit. We do it because we always have, because it fills the silence, because being quiet is awkward and being kind is hard. So we whisper, we laugh, we pass the story along, not always with cruelty, but often without reflection. And that's what makes gossip so slippery. It doesn't feel evil. It feels normal, but just because something feels natural doesn't mean it's harmless. Gossip isn't just about curiosity or cruelty. Sometimes it serves a function, a quiet one, but powerful. In small communities, villages, workplaces, friend groups, people rely on reputation to survive. And gossip is one of the tools that builds and polices that reputation. Think about it. If someone consistently lies, cheats, or harms others, how do we find out? Usually not through official statements, but through whispers, through warnings, through stories passed from one person to another. In that way, gossip works like social glue and social law. It rewards good behavior. They always help out. They're solid, and punishes bad behavior. Watch your back around him. It's not perfect, it's not always fair, but it's fast, and it's effective. Gossip spreads norms. It teaches what's acceptable and what isn't, who's safe and who isn't. It gives people quiet power, especially those without formal authority. A manager might not be listening, but the group is permission, and if your behavior is damaging, the group will talk. And that talk can isolate you just as easily as it can protect you. In psychology, this is called indirect reciprocity. We don't just treat people well based on how they treat us, we also watch how they treat others. And gossip helps pass along that history. So yes, gossip can be petty. It can be cruel, but it can also be a survival tool, especially for the vulnerable, for those without power, for those who can't confront danger head-on. Think of the whisper networks. In workplaces, where women warn each other about predatory bosses, that's gossip. But it's also protection, justice, safety. When no one else is listening, gossip is sometimes the only voice we have. It's raw, it's messy, but it's real. There's a moment that comes after the gossip. Not always, but often. Silence, stillness, a strange tightness in the chest. You shared the story, you laughed, you vented, but now you're wondering, did I go too far? This is where shame begins to creep in, because even if the gossip felt harmless, there's always that voice in the back of your head. Would I want someone saying that about me? What if they find out? Why did I even say it? Gossip is social, but the guilt that follows is deeply personal. And maybe that's a good thing, because guilt is a kind of compass. It tells us when we've violated our own values, when we've crossed a line we didn't see until we were on the other side. Forces us to ask hard questions. Am I using someone else's pain to avoid my own? Am I judging them for something I secretly struggle with? Am I talking about them because I'm afraid of looking at myself? That's where gossip becomes something else. Not just a habit, but a signal that there might be something unresolved inside, something we're projecting outward, something we're avoiding. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the parts of ourselves we reject, deny, or disown. And often, we see our shadow most clearly in the people we criticize the harshest. Gossip is rarely just about them. It's about us, our insecurities, our fears, our hunger for belonging, our secret belief that if someone else falls, we'll feel taller. And when we gossip, we temporarily feel lighter, more in control, more connected, but the feeling fades. And what's left is often something heavier. So what do we do with that? We reflect, we get honest. We learn to notice the difference between curiosity and cruelty, because the most dangerous gossip is the kind we do without realizing it. It's easy to treat gossip like a guilty pleasure, something you shouldn't do, but still kind of enjoy. But here's the twist. Gossip isn't always bad. Sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes it's even good, because gossip isn't one thing, it's a tool. And like any tool, it depends on how you use it. Think about this. Have you ever been warned about someone before meeting them? Not in a dramatic way, just a quiet heads up. He doesn't respect boundaries. She plays people against each other. Watch out, he only calls when he needs something. That's gossip, but it's also protection. It's a way people look out for each other when official systems fail, when the truth is too risky to say out loud. Especially in environments where power is unequal, gossip becomes a lifeline, a whisper passed hand to hand in the absence of justice. These are called whisper networks, and they've saved people from abusers, from manipulators, from being blindsided by danger. So no, gossip isn't just drama. It's intelligent sharing in unsafe systems. But it's not just about safety. Gossip can also be an act of care. I'm worried about her. She hasn't been herself. She's isolating. Do you think she's okay? That's still gossip. But it comes from a place of empathy, not judgment. There's also storytelling. Gossip as the oldest form of narrative. People gathering to talk about people, to make sense of behavior, to learn lessons from others' choices. We gossip about breakups, failures, and scandals because deep down we're trying to understand them. We use gossip to ask, what would I have done? Could that happen to me? What does this say about us? So yes, gossip can harm, but it can also teach, warn, connect, protect. It all depends on intent, tone, truth, and timing. The question isn't just, is this gossip? The question is, why am I saying this? And what will it do? If the answer is care, safety, or truth, maybe it's not something to feel ashamed of. Maybe it's something to say out loud, just carefully. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. Not everything needs to be shared. Not every thought needs a listener. Not every secret is yours to carry, let alone spread. And that's where ethics come in. Because gossip, by its nature, feels casual, fast, unfiltered, like background noise in a busy room. But every piece of gossip is a choice. A tiny moral decision. Do I pass this along? Do I add my own spin? Do I laugh? Do I listen? We don't talk enough about that moment. The moment before the whisper, the second before the sentence starts. Because that's where power lives. The power to protect, to preserve trust, to choose silence over spectacle. Here's the thing. You can say something true and still cause harm. You can say something funny and still betray someone. You can mean no harm and still hurt. Intent isn't everything. Impact matters. So here's a question worth asking. Every time we feel the urge to spill the tea, who benefits from this? Do I, by feeling superior, by feeling closer to someone else? Do they, by having their story told without consent? Does anyone? And if the answer is no, if this does nothing but stir the pot, hurt someone, or fuel drama, then maybe it's not worth. Saying silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom. And in a world obsessed with being heard, choosing not to speak can be an act of loyalty, integrity, even love. Because anyone can talk. But not everyone can hold trust. And sometimes, the strongest person in the room is the one who hears everything and says nothing. Gossip isn't going anywhere. It's older than language. It's deeper than logic. It's part of us woven into the way we bond, judge, compare, and connect. We like to think we're above it, that we don't talk behind backs, that we only share concerns. But we do talk. We always have. Because gossip isn't just about other people. It's about us, our fears, our longings, our secret need to belong, and our even deeper need to matter. We whisper to feel close. We whisper to feel safe. We whisper to make sense of things that don't make sense alone. Sometimes it's shallow. Sometimes it's toxic. But sometimes it's the only way we know how to say, I care, I'm scared, I need someone to hear me. We gossip because we're human. And being human is messy. But in the end, gossip isn't just noise. It's narrative. It's meaning-making. It's how we build tribes, define morality, and protect each other, even if we don't always get it right. So the next time you feel that pull to lean in, to whisper, to share, pause for a second, ask yourself, is this kindness or ego, connection or control, care or cruelty? Because behind every story we tell is a choice. And sometimes, the story we choose to tell says more about us than the person we're talking about. In the end, to be human is to whisper, just make sure it's worth saying.